The two most powerful men on the planet just sent the most bullish Bitcoin signal of the decade. CPI is in, and it is down to 3.4%. The machine is celebrating a fake number that they altered, being over 50% above their target rate. Rate hike odds have plummeted, and Trump's latest move is telling you to get prepared for massive money printing and hot inflation. Inflation-adjusted capital gains aren't the only thing on the menu for Bitcoin either. The Orange Man's own company just scooped up a few thousand Bitcoin. No biggie. BlackRock has been a buy-in. And Larry Fink just uttered one of the most bullish sentences I've ever heard.
We're going to have to raise trillions of dollars over the coming years. And
that's right. Trillions are coming. History is starting to align, and it's insanely bullish. How bullish? Well, how does a humble 330% rally sound? Welcome back and buckle up. We got a big show today. Send it.
Having your money in a bank account is one of the worst financial decisions of a lifetime. And so trying to get more and more people to grow with their country and to invest side by side, that is the only way we are going to broaden economic success. We're not going to be able to broaden economic success only by wages, because wages in this AI world are not going to grow as fast as the potential of the AI growth and the potential and capital that is going to be investing in these investments will outperform.
We're going to have to raise trillions of dollars over the coming years. And
Larry Fink just said they're going to need trillions of dollars for the AI build-out. And having money in a bank account is for the differently abled. Do you know what that means? It means big print. The biggest print of our lives. Because they're going to need trillions more. On top of that, just to paper over some other major problems. We got a lot to dive into. Don't forget to smash the like, it helps give us a pamp in the algos, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new so you get the best in Bitcoin news delivered to you daily for free. It's a win-win. Now, here we go. Let's take a little trip back in time, Bitcoin Conference 2025 in Las Vegas. I remember sitting in the room while JD Vance was giving his speech at the B&B. There was a lot of us in there. And typically we were just socializing, not paying attention, but since, we had an episode coming up, I was like, well, let me pay attention. Maybe there's something I can grab, put in, tomorrow's show. Sure enough, and not too many people picked up on it. He didn't outright say it, but he did everything but outright say it. JD Vance basically said the US was going to nationalize AI. I also believe in the episode, like right after the conference, I said that, or the second one. And either way. But if you take that into consideration, a lot of this makes a lot more sense, because I don't think we're looking at some natural economic decision to build out all these AI data centers, etc. It's more of a military operation, reminiscent of the Manhattan Project, but 100,000x more capital intensive. And you can look at those numbers. It's insane. And you should take a look at Dante's last episode for this AI bubble. And while AI is a bit of a horror show and can or could be used to subjugate the human race, if we simply put on our fear porn blinders, we can see the bullishness from the trees.
Because you can invest in anything. And I think that's what's going to happen over time. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. It's the way that I connect it back, that people that try to separate Bitcoin from crypto are making a mistake. People that are trying to say, well, Bitcoin is a scam on the TradFi side. And I'm like, well, Bitcoin is the sum of the ecosystem right now of crypto, but eventually it will be the sum of the ecosystem of tokens, and all things will be tokens. So Bitcoin becomes the sum of every asset that you have in some framework. And at the end of the day, that's really what the S&P 500 is. You ask anyone that invested in 2010, their biggest mistake was not investing in the S&P 500. If you invested in venture, if you invested in all, and you add up the 15 years, almost nothing is beating the S&P 500. Nothing is beating the NASDAQ. So you may have for 3 months, for 6 years, for 9 years, but once you got to 2022, all of these things have kind of worked out that no assets are actually beating not only Bitcoin, but they weren't beating the S&P 500. They certainly weren't beating the NASDAQ. And I think over time, you'll see the NASDAQ and S&P start to give up the ghost to Bitcoin. And that has been the moment that I thought would be the acceleratory point, is once AI gets there. And that's why I say, the purest AI trade is the only thing that AI can't destroy. The only thing it can't destroy is Bitcoin, in my opinion.
If AI, for some reason, has you not bullish on Bitcoin, be sure to go watch that Mark Moss interview. It was epic. Larry Fink and BlackRock know what's coming, and they're gearing up for it, and so is the mighty Orange Man. Whoa, whoa, easy. Family program, maybe a little more excited than I thought, but we welcome that enthusiasm. Look at this. President Trump's capital gains tax cut discussions include indexing capital gains for inflation before taxes are calculated. This would mean the taxes would be applied on gains adjusted for inflation. Trump has also suggested exemptions for sales of homes worth $2 million or less from capital gains taxes. Very interesting. So Besant, Donald Trump, all of a sudden they're worried about capital gains on inflation? I'm certain that's just a random coincidence. Well, I did. Also, until I saw this. Trump Media's latest 10Q shows that the company held 14,139 BTC as of July 31st, up from 9,542 BTC in March. And yeah, it might be worth paying attention when a media company tied to the sitting president just scoops up a few thousand Bitcoin over the course of a couple months. Probably nothing. Look, Larry Fink and Donald Trump are telegraphing you what is coming. They're positioning themselves, and that's what we need to do. Lawrence Lepard is about to break it down for you, and I'm going to reveal to you what the bullish chart wizards have discovered. History and the present are beginning to coalesce. But before we bring it home today, look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
A lot of people who are serious about Bitcoin skip the most important part. Not NGU, holding your own keys, being your own bank. If the last few weeks taught you anything, it's that you need to be prepared. Multi-sig, running your own node, verifying your own chain instead of trusting someone else's. Bitcoin Way walks you through every step until you've actually got it, not just installed it. They also cover privacy phones and Plan B residency if you're thinking bigger picture. Schedule a free consultation, scan the QR, or hit the link below. Do it today. I've always been a skeptical guy on the Bitcoin-backed loans. Too many of these platforms turn into rug pulls wearing yield costumes. Ledn isn't that. 8 years, 10 billion in loans, 0 customer Bitcoin lost, 0 rehypothecated. They don't lend out your collateral, period. Auto top-up protection so you're never getting liquidated. Lowest rates in the market, no fine print. Keep your stack, get the cash, repay whenever. 0 penalties. I personally have 2 friends who have used the product to put down payments on their first homes. The smartest minds don't sell their assets. They borrow against them. Head over to learn.ledn.io/simply today.
We're back to this existential fight. Either you believe in team fiat and fiat currency in a fiat world and, you lie, cheat, and steal. And, you just print more money to keep everything going and you're a statist and you think the government's great. Or you're a libertarian. You're an Austrian economist. You understand that's all horseshit. Those people have been stealing from us and gaslighting us for years. And you know that the world was a much better place on a sound money system. I mean, the notable example is kind of the Bell Epoch from 1873 to 1913. Enormous productivity growth, enormous, just in so many ways, a great period. And you recognize that if we went back to sound money, the world would be a better place. It's just in a million different ways. And you say to yourself, okay, if that's the case, what am I going to do? I'm going to advocate for sound money. I'm going to vote with my feet for sound money. I'm not going to play their game, and then furthermore, I'm going to call out their game as being bullshit. And then, if everybody decides to do that, their money dies and this money becomes the new form of money. And that's really what's going to happen. I mean, I have zero doubt that that's what's going to happen. Now, where it gets tricky is, how fast, what twists and turns, etc. I mean, these time frames are just so goddamn hard to figure out. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I think Saylor used the comparison. I went and did some ChatGPT work on it, and it took 70 years for the U.S. to go from kind of almost no electricalization to 90% electricalization. Just electricity. I think Thomas Edison first electrified parts of New York in the early 1900s. And there were parts of the country that even in the 60s still didn't have electricity, which is hard to believe, but there were. And so, and this is the same kind of a thing. I mean, sound money is really a life and world changing innovation. But it's not going to get adopted necessarily tomorrow. I mean, there's a process of adoption. Now, I think, we've got better communications, we've got better technology, we've got other networks that have grown, we've got internet. You and I are talking from different parts of the country and broadcasting to thousands of people that we can't see and don't even know. I mean, there's every reason to expect that this isn't going to go as slow as the adoption of electricity. Do you know what I mean? It's going to go a lot faster. And we've come from, $1 a coin to $60,000 a coin. And that's only accelerating. So, I think we're going to get there. But I mean, for Bitcoin to flip gold and then to ultimately flip the dollar, it's got to be a decade. It's got to be a couple decades, probably more. I mean, sadly, but I know that those who are in it during those decades when it's doing that are going to benefit massively versus other people. I mean, I look at I think that in the same way that some people bought the Mag 7 post-internet bust in 2009, 2010, 2011, and literally made fortunes on it. I mean, if you owned Amazon, you owned Apple, you owned Google, any of those stocks through that whole period from, say, 2010 or 11 to the present, I mean, your life is different, right? I think in the same way that occurred, and those were network businesses that grew because everyone realized they needed them. Okay, I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Bitcoin. Everyone's going to realize they need it. It's a network business. It's going to grow and be adopted. And there's a fixed supply. And so, I think in the next 10 years, Bitcoin's going to, millions of dollars a coin. And, you get a chance to buy one of those right now for $59,000. So, my advice is you do it. But everyone's situation is different. So that's not really investment advice.
Did you hear what Larry just said? Everyone's going to realize they need it. In the next 10 years, Bitcoin is going to millions of dollars a coin. And you get a chance to buy one of those right now for $59K at the time of that recording and $65K now. You know who shares that sentiment? None other than Tim Draper. His eyebrows aren't the only thing of legend, but also his bullishness is of insanely high regard. First, they'll say we accept Bitcoin. Then they'll say we only accept Bitcoin. Then there will be a run on the banks. Then the world as we know it will fundamentally change forever as Bitcoin goes infinite against the US dollar. That, my friends, is a compelling argument, possibly the only argument that matters. All right, here we go, and here is history coalescing. Bitcoin is getting ready for an explosive move. We got Bollinger Bandwidth at its narrowest level since October 2023. Bitcoin went on to soar more than 330% from October 23 to October 25. Do with that information what you will. Bitcoin is either a little ahead or right on schedule, and you know what? Not buying aggressively in these ranges has historically been, well, sickening, It's times like these the fear isn't Bitcoin or its volatility. The fear should be in not holding Bitcoin. Don't believe me? Listen to Tim Draper.
Say to people, I used to say, hey, buy some Bitcoin. It's fun. It's interesting. Might be kind of an interesting thing to hold on to. Now I say, you better hold Bitcoin. If you want to protect your family, you want to protect your company, you want to protect your country, you better have some Bitcoin. In fact, it's irresponsible now for a company to operate and have a big treasury and not have some portion of that, 5, 10, 15% in Bitcoin. Because, well, when Silicon Valley Bank went out of business, we almost saw the domino effect. We almost lost all the banks right there. And if that ever happens, you, as leaders of your businesses, are going to be responsible for payroll for at least 2, maybe 4 weeks. And if you're in Europe, you're responsible for payroll for years. And so you better have some Bitcoin on your balance sheet so you can make those payroll and keep your business afloat. If you run a family, if you manage a family's money, you ought to have about 6 months worth of Bitcoin, because if the dollars that you own are suddenly worthless, what are you going to do? And if you're a government, and if there is hyperinflation in your government, and the currency goes the way the old Argentinian peso or the Nigerian naira went, and you don't hold any Bitcoin, your government coffers are worthless. So it's gone from, telling people, hey, this is a really interesting opportunity, to telling people, you should be scared if you don't own Bitcoin. You should be very, very worried.
So let's bring it home. Larry Fink didn't say maybe, he said trillions, plural. And when the guy who runs $14 trillion tells you the money printer isn't just warming up, it's about to go supersonic, you shouldn't ignore that. You position for it. Same with the Orange Man's own media company. Adding like 5,000 Bitcoin, that's not a rounding error. That's not diversification. That's a sitting president's business quietly building a lifeboat while his Treasury Secretary talks about indexing capital gains for inflation. Allegedly, a coincidence. And then the charts show up and start rhyming with history. Bollinger Bands this tight right before a 330% run just a couple years ago. We've seen this movie before. We have a decent idea of how it ends. And the popcorn's Bitcoin. Here's the thing. This isn't Bitcoin about to do something crazy. This is the dollar about to do what it always does. And Bitcoin just happens to be the one thing in the room that can't be printed. The fear isn't holding Bitcoin through this. The fear is being the guy still holding cash when Fink, Trump, and the chart wizards all start pointing in the same direction. Stay humble. Stack sats. Okay, real talk for a second. Not your keys, not your coins. I've said it. You've said it. We've all said it 1,000 times. But nobody really talks about the part after that. Once you got the keys, how do you not mess it up? Because I've seen people lose a seed phrase, or get it replicated, forget where they hid it, spill copy on it, all of it. One dumb mistake and your whole stack's gone. That's the actual reason I like BitKey. Instead of one seed phrase holding everything together, it splits things 3 ways. By default, your phone, the BitKey hardware, and a key held by block. You only need 2 of 3 to move anything. So if you lose one, you're not locked out, and block can't touch your Bitcoin on their own either. Nobody's holding the keys to the kingdom but you. And here's the part I think is kind of underrated. The hardware itself shows you what you're signing. So even if your phone or laptop somehow got compromised, you're not blindly trusting some address. You're confirming the real one on hardware no one else can reach. No seed phrase to babysit, real recovery if you lose a device, a real plan for what happens to your stack down the road. That's not theory, that's how self-custody should have worked from the start. Download BitKey today. Use my code SENDIT for 10% off. And this episode has been brought to you by BitKey. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to smash the like, subscribe, share the Sound Money Gospel, give us a pamp, and let us know what you think down below. Is Bitcoin's vengeance upon us? Hey, I love you guys. Catch you next time. Poosh.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.